Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar news update video. Two pieces of news to cover, one very small, one much larger. So we'll start with the small one, and that is that we have our first sort of teaser, sort of preview, sort of build up to The Shadow of Kyoshi, the second Kyoshi novel from Abrams Books. You can see here the Abrams Kids account put up this sort of mocked up sort of preview of the cover here, as well as kind of again highlighting the date and stuff like that. It's going to be July 2020. I think we do actually have a full date. I think it's like the 20th or the 21st of July, I think is the full date. But either way, we're still a while off. It might change by a week or two as it goes on. But it is interesting that they're teasing it like this, that they did put together this sort of mock-up cover rather than just waiting for the actual cover to be released. Now, what it tells us, I think, the only thing it really tells us is just the color scheme that they're probably going to go for. I'm assuming the red, white, black will be the color scheme for the final cover when we actually get to see it, which is a nice contrast with the first book, which had a kind of, white, gray, black, and green kind of color scheme. So this is very different with the red, and it sort of fits the kind of seemingly darker kind of stuff that we're going to go into here. But I think it's pretty clear that they'll probably just replace the two here with whatever the main image is, which is going to be Kyoshi, and I assume this is an opportunity to show off one of the other characters in the image, or it might just be Kyoshi again. Again, this is where it's going to be tricky of just like, if it is just Kyoshi, what do you do to make it stand out, and so on. But either way, we're still a few months away from this. We're still, I think, a good few months away from even getting like preview pages and stuff like that. But it's something I'm super excited for. I loved the first book. I thought it was fantastic. Definitely the highlight of the year in Avatar so far, and I think the second book is going to be such a big thing now that we know it's like a known quantity. Like, we know Avatar as a novel works. The second one has so much hype going into it now. So that's that piece of news. The big piece of news that we'll spend a bit of time on here is our first in-hand look at lots of pictures of the Avatar The Last Airbender action figures from Diamond Select Toys. We've only seen some early, preview kind of images, some teasers, pre-orders have gone up and stuff like this. This is the full reveal of everything. We now know this is what the figure will be. We have a look at it in package. This is what you will get, and so on, as well as this site, ToyArk, having a kind of bit of a review of the figures from an in-hand look. So that's going to be pretty interesting to see as we go through it. But let's get into this, and I think we'll start with this image first, the in-package pictures. This kind of confirms everything to us, basically. This is kind of the image I think a lot of people wanted to see. So here is the packaging, here's how it's going to look, and I think it works. I think it's really nice, just the characters being on the sort of bit of red at the bottom, the rest of it being sort of relatively plain, and it draws attention to the figure inside. Big sort of open window so you can see everything with the figure. It's not hidden away at all. And then you get a look at the accessories that you do get with it, which is, I think, is where the weakness that we'll get into comes in that each of the figures only comes with a standard black stand for the figure and then one accessory. That's pretty disappointing to me. I thought we would be getting at least two accessories per figure, and it feels like this is like a budget thing, that something happened and they had to cut out one of the other accessories. And the reason I say that is because a few months ago I covered this interview that the sculptor for these figures did. It was one of up until this photo shoot thing here, basically, this was one of the only news pieces we had about the figures in terms of information on them, was the sculptor talking about them and the images that he presented with this interview. And you can see here the Zuko has the same fire fist that we do actually get in the final product, but he also has the sword as well. So where's that in the final product? Here's Katara, and you can see there's this is attached to her by default in the figure, so it's not considered an accessory. And then you have the water ball that she does come with, but then they just completely left out this big water double hand replacement accessory thing here. That I think would have really completed Katara, and it feels like that's kind of what she's missing as we go through the pictures of her in a minute. And then you can see with Aang, he comes with the staff, but also the plan initially was obviously to have a Momo included at some point as well, which I think is going to be a big missed opportunity if, you know, the figures continue to come out and only have very small accessories, and that where is the opportunity to get Momo now, given that you missed out on it with Aang. So I think, like, I think it is a negative that the figures do only come with one accessory, and I think they'd be borderline like perfect for the price point if they had the extra accessory. If Aang came with Momo, Zuko came with the swords, and Katara came with that better water effect part. As it is, especially the likes of Katara, it feels very like we're missing something there, just because the water ball isn't a very good water effect part. Like, really, of all the things, like, it's just a perfect sphere of water. Like, what's up with that? The Zuko Fire Fist, I think, does work as just a standard fire attack, and it looks pretty nice with the kind of transparent plastic, the replacement hand. And then Aang coming with his staff was a very, very obvious thing. But I do think the Zuko needed the swords, and it would have been so cool to have Momo. Even Momo with no articulation, just a little plastic kind of figurine of Momo would have been nice, just to complete the look, because some of these pictures we'll get into, the group shots look amazing, and it would have been so cool to have Momo. But anyway, let's take a look at some of these pictures more up close to get some ideas. So here's a shot of Aang from the back, which I think gives us an interesting look at some of the joints, especially in the legs here, as this is the sort of open section here at the back. You can see the really big, you know, double jointed knees here. You know, they had to put the cut in above his boots, of course, so it meant it had to go through the more sort of baggy section of his clothing. So it looks like it's a pretty, you know, big, decent joint. The fact that it's double jointed means there's going to be lots of posability in the legs. You can see the kind of cut for the thigh swivel, the forward-backward motion in the hips, and then the kind of cut there for the outward motion. It all seems to be here. And then, most importantly, with these sort of kind of mid-range figures that aren't like super high-end, but they're closer to this than just being like a toy you'd find in a toy shop, ankle movement is so important for posing. So for the martial arts characters here in Avatar, this is so important to have, is to have the forward and backward kind of motion, as well as the ankle rock side to side, is just as important for the kind of wider poses. So that's a big thing for me to see with the articulation. The text of the article, the review, seems to highlight that the shoulders and elbows are the weaknesses with all of these figures when it comes to the joints. Primarily the elbows don't seem to be great on these figures, and that, like, they say that Aang only gets a 90-degree bend in his elbow. It's just a simple cut joint, rather than kind of being double jointed elbows, which you would probably want to do everything you need to. But you can sort of tell, because of the way the arrows have to be for the tattoos down his arms, putting in a double joint there could have made the painting of the arrows down his arms very complicated. But either way, you can see the detail on the paint here, but you can also see, I think, what could be a problem if there's not the best quality control on these figures when they come out, is little blemishes on the paint. Like you can see there's clearly like some sort of a thumbprint or something like that on the end of Aang's arrow here. You can see on the side of his elbow here, the paint isn't like perfectly straight or anything like that. And it's just little things like that it really highlights that his whole arm is like painted. It's not just kind of flesh colored plastic there that they're doing. It seems to be fully painted in that color. So there's a lot of paint gone in here, and that's probably why we are missing out on some accessories, is because of how much paint is needed to get these characters across. We'll move on to the next picture here. There's just a nice, really cool action shot of Aang holding the staff in just a pretty standard pose, and it looks really cool. It's at this point I think I'll bring up the whole idea of another thing that was sort of maybe teased from before that they changed. It's just the facial expression that they went for with Aang. You can clearly see there that it's more of a determined expression. This is meant to be more of like Aang in battle. The kind of furrowed eyebrows there, you can see, is very different than some of the earlier shots where we had Aang with a more neutral or happy expression, you can clearly see the mouth is molded differently, and especially the eyebrows are done differently as well. Initially, my thought was that, oh, Aang's going to come with like a face or a head swap, so you get both options. But they seem to have committed to just the determined expression for the end goal, for the final product. I borderline would have preferred that kind of happy Aang, because I think it represents him more often rather than it being fully action focused. But I can sort of see the idea that they went for. But it is interesting, they didn't really go for like the, in battle expression for Katara or Zuko, but they did for Aang. That just seemed a little odd to me, but it's not too big of a problem. But it's one of those things where like, this is where they could have been clearer from the start with the information on this, because this is still an image, as you can see there, they're using on Amazon for the pre-order for this figure. This is an official image they're using to sell this on Amazon, and people are going to get this figure, and I think potentially wonder why it's got a different face than was initially talked about. I understand to a degree, like many people probably haven't seen this this article here about the sculptor and the fact that there are accessories that ultimately weren't included and stuff like that. But I think the Aang's face could be a bit of a kind of problem for some people. But we'll move on. Here's just a really nice pose of Zuko, again getting across the double knee joint there, and stuff like that. That just a simple pose, because the figure has articulation, allows you to do a really nice like Zuko getting ready for battle pose here. I think it looks super cool, and it kind of really highlights that. Oh, like I would pay more for these figures if they came with more accessories. Like, imagine this Zuko did have the swords and you were able to put them in his hands and do swordsman poses as well as bending poses. But still, Zuko I think is kind of looking pretty good here. Here's a look at the Katara's legs here to get across the joints for her. So again, you can see the benefit of the double jointing in the ankles there. The fact that there's forward and back and side to side. You couldn't do a pose like that if you didn't have both of those ranges of motion. You can see her knee joint is smaller, of course, because Zuko and Aang both have the sort of baggy pants. She doesn't, so still it is double jointed. That's nice to see. Here's a cool shot of just Aang walking down the kind of a step. It really highlights that like you can pose a figure like that of just in a natural pose walking down a step. That's a kind of hard thing to do for a lot of figures. And here's the really cool group shot. I think this looks great, just the three of them together. The only weakness I think again is the sphere of doom here that Katara has. It's not the best effect part. But the three characters in plastic sort of side by side looks fantastic, and I'm super excited to see if they announce like wave 2 and get to see like a Toph and a Sokka, which are probably highly likely to be part of the next wave, along with probably, I'd like to see book 3 Katara, even if it is a copy of a figure straight away, but probably like Azula is probably a good shout for the other figure if they're going for 3 every wave. But yeah, we'll go back to the article here to look at some of the other pictures and especially read what he has to say. So the point here is just that in general, the reviewer gets across the idea that they're like, they're like 80% like as good as they could be, but there's a few kind of problems. He highlights that they're painted head to toe, no raw plastic anywhere. That's kind of rare to see on figures, and that's very likely where a lot of the budget of these figures went to. Why we don't get any why we don't have that many accessories, because especially with this shot here, you can really see like her whole leg is painted. Like if it's just standard blue the whole way through, like did they need to paint that? Could they not have just molded that in that color blue plastic and just put the paint for the white on the end of her legs and going into the shoes and so on? Did they overdo maybe the paint in some parts? Like, I get Aang, you probably need to have a lot of paint on him because the paint for his arrows probably only works as well as it does because it's painted on top of a different paint. But it's still interesting. The articulation points that he makes is just that effectively, like, from the waist down, the figures are amazing with regards to joints, but the shoulders and elbows are where some of the weaknesses comes in, with the idea that there is only, for like Aang, a 90-degree bend on the elbow, and so on, that it could do with just a little bit more to put it just over the edge, given that they're all kind of martial arts style characters. And it could do with just a bit more going on. They also highlight that Katara especially has a bit of a limited upper body movement because of the way she is kind of sculpted and the way her kind of outfit ends up kind of looking for her. And I think a large part of that comes in with the fact that the way her clothes are is that the upper arm is kind of thick with all the sort of baggy clothing, and then right at the middle point is when it just becomes her actual arm without the baggy clothing. And so the joint has to go in at the sort of transition point there, but it also means that's going to really limit what you can do with her elbows. So there's a sort of problem with that. Very likely that is the limit of kind of Katara's elbow motion there. And, you know, that's just a factor of, like, they probably went for, that's fine because we want it to be screen accurate and not have a joint just, you know, tearing the character's arm in half, and so on. Like, you can understand that for the knees and stuff like that, but like an excessive joint, like going through multiple different kind of thicknesses of plastic, could have been a bit of a problem. But you can sort of see that, like, some designs may not work as well as others. So that's interesting to see. But like, it is cool she comes with the water pouch, and in general, like, looks great for like the first, you know, proper Katara action figure that we're going to get. It is definitely a huge positive here, what we have. And then yeah, there's a whole image gallery here. I'll link this article if you guys want to check it out. I suppose we'll take a look at this image here of, again, the water ball, just highlighting that it's not that great of an accessory. And here it is again. It's like the fact that it, like the way it's attached, you know, the kind of flesh little bit there and so on. It's not a perfect, exactly what you want, but the big positive here is just that the general sculpting of the figure looks great. It's just not perfect articulation, and then probably accessories is the biggest issue overall. Still, I have my 3 on pre-order. I'll be reviewing them as soon as they arrive. I'm very excited for them, and as well as that, I'm excited to see them announce the next wave of figures. This is going to be a very interesting thing to follow, because I think a lot of people have had fun, you know, showing off their Funko Pops that they've got, but Funko Pops are pretty limited in what they can do. I think some people are going to have a lot of fun with these, you know, posable Avatar action figures, and setting up like dioramas and stuff like that, like they do in this photo shoot. As more characters come in, this is just going to be very, very cool to see. Something we haven't had, because I think the original Avatar action figure line was so early on with the show. It was before the fan base properly established itself. So many fans just have zero experience with that initial toy line, even though it was actually all right for what it was. Just the choice of characters and the lack of female characters was the huge problem. Now we're finally getting good, you know, high quality action figures. It's going to be interesting to see how the fandom views them. And then if these are a success and they do more, that will definitely open the door to Korra action figures. And I really do feel like a lot of the Korra characters, I think, would work really well as action figures. Like Korra herself, like her design feels like perfect for an action figure, in that it feels like you could fit all the joints you need in without any without her outfit getting in the way of maybe some perfect jointing like Katara's does a little bit here. That's going to be very cool to see if we get the Korra action figures, and it's going to be like, why didn't we have this stuff back in like 2012 when Korra was airing? Why was there no proper merch line and so on? It's late that this is happening, but it's still good that it's happening. But yeah, that's been the video. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on the little hype thing we got for Shadow of Kyoshi, as well as your thoughts on getting to see lots more images of the Avatar action figures. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.